Hey everybody, welcome to the Hard Times Strong Men podcast. We've got a bonus episode for you today. Surprise! We're going to be talking about the Supreme Court's ruling striking down the New York law regarding handgun carry and what that means for the rest of us. Put your tray tables in the upright and locked position, fasten your seatbelts because we're coming in for a landing. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us here. This is Six and I'm flying solo today. What have I got cooking for you? This Supreme Court ruling. Has anybody checked this out in the news? I just did. Supreme Court just struck down the New York State's handgun law. If that isn't a huge blow to the gun control crowd, I don't know what is. The governor of New York, a Democrat of course, called the ruling not just reckless but reprehensible. Also, a leading progressive group called the ruling shameful and outrageous, pointing at the recent mass shootings in New York and Texas. President Joe Biden managed to get led to the podium by his handlers so that he could say that the ruling contradicts both common sense and the Constitution and should deeply trouble us all. Honestly, Joe, the only thing that deeply troubles us all is your lack of common sense and understanding of the Constitution, because you and your cronies in Congress are protected by men with guns. Meanwhile, you're on a campaign to take away guns from law-abiding citizens, making us more vulnerable to the fact that we can be potentially killed by men with guns, whether that be the police or criminals. Because Lord knows, police haven't been held accountable for anything that they've done in recent history. Look at Uvalde. God knows it's taking citizen interference for anything to get done. There used to be a time when politicians actually feared their constituents. This kind of fear that there is now is just a fear of losing power. Back then, they feared them because they knew that they could be tarred and feathered, they could be strung up, they could be thrown in jail. Now politicians can, they can get away with murder, and they have, many documented times on both sides of the aisle. But let's get into this. The New York State ruling that was struck down stated that the state of New York makes it a crime to possess a firearm without a license, whether inside or outside the home. An individual who wants to carry a firearm outside his home may obtain an unrestricted license to have and carry a concealed pistol or revolver if he can prove that proper cause exists for doing so. An applicant satisfies the proper cause requirement only if he can demonstrate a special need for self-protection distinguishable from that of the general community. Basically, you have to be a special person to get them. The Supreme Court ruled 6-3 along party lines that this is unconstitutional. Judge Clarence Thomas wrote for the court, quote, "When the Second Amendment's plain text covers an individual's conduct, the Constitution presumptively protects that conduct. The government must then justify its regulation by demonstrating that it is consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. Only then may a court conclude that the individual's conduct falls outside the Second Amendment's unqualified command." What is he saying here? He's essentially saying that we have to go on precedence of how the nation has ruled regarding the regulation of firearms, which we haven't. According to the Constitution, possession of a firearm, even a cannon, is lawful. What's going to result of this? This could result in a sweeping strikedown of all forms of firearm regulation across the country. Because this ruling right here, while seemingly small, seemingly only applying to the state of New York's law, just ruled it constitutional to carry a firearm outside of the home, regardless of if you have a permit or not. This new standard of review puts a huge burden of proof on the government to show that the restrictions that it keeps trying to implement don't violate the Constitution. Basically, the government has to show proper cause for wanting to restrict firearm ownership. And in doing so with this ruling, this could put all of these new assault weapon bans or gun sale licensing schemes on the hot seat to also be struck down before they're even out of the voting phase, as it should be. And honestly, good riddance, because all gun control measures are an infringement on our Second Amendment rights. Justice Thomas went on to say the constitutional right to bear arms in public for self-defense is not a second-class right, subject to an entirely different body of rules than the other Bill of Rights guarantees. We know of no other constitutional right that an individual may exercise only after demonstrating to government officers some special need. This is not how the First Amendment works when it comes to unpopular speech or the free exercise of religion. It is not how the Sixth Amendment works when it comes to defendant's right to confront the witnesses against him, and it is not how the Second Amendment works when it comes to public carry for self-defense. This ruling comes at a perfect time for the citizens of New York, as they have seen violent crime rise steadily since 2020, and the age of wokedom began. New York City Mayor Eric Adams said that the Supreme Court striking down a New York concealed gun law will put New Yorkers at further risk of gun violence. He said in a statement, "One thing is certain, we will do whatever is in our power using every resource available to ensure that the gains we've been doing during this administration are not undone, to make certain New Yorkers are not put in further danger of gun violence. This decision may have opened an additional river feeding the sea of gun violence, but we will do everything we can to dam it." Well, Eric, unfortunately, the only thing that's causing more gun violence is more gun control, especially in your city that seems to be running rampant. We've seen in the news that people are leaving New York City in droves. You guys have run out of U-Haul trucks because people can't get out of your city fast enough. He went on to say that we cannot allow New York to become the Wild West. Eric, please, take a seat. You have a lot to learn about what actually happened in the Wild West. It's almost as bad as Vice President Harris comparing the January 6th riots to the events that happened at Pearl Harbor. Either way, both statements are ludicrous, sensational, and have not one iota of truth to them. Yes, it was an uncivilized time, but at the same time, people feared to die because they knew that if they messed around, they were going to find out. And honestly, if you kind of want to take our guns, you need to stack up or f*** off. You gotta ask if it's the gun violence or if it's the lack of control that your administration has over crime. But honestly, getting back to things that should really concern Americans are the words of President Biden. He said, quote, "For centuries, states have regulated who may purchase or possess weapons, the types of weapons they may use, and the places they may carry those weapons. And the courts have upheld those regulations. I call on Americans across the country to make their voices heard on gun safety. Lives are on the line." Is he calling for violence? Because if you look back, the only way that the Democrats have protested over the last few years have been with burning down cities and causing riots. Is he calling for violence and riots across the United States in response to this ruling? Isn't former President Trump under investigation for pretty much doing the exact same thing? Things that make you go, Anyway, that'll do it for us here at the Hard Time Strong Men podcast. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this little bonus episode. As always, like, subscribe, share with your friends. We appreciate you guys listening, and we appreciate you guys subscribing. Bye, everybody.